Okay, I think we're going to get started. So if you could make your way to your seat. I want to welcome everybody, and I want to thank you for attending the second Teen Mental Health First Aid Annual Winter Summit. Thank you all for coming. A few housekeeping things. There are bathrooms through this door over here. There's also raised there's like a raised thing to cover the cords, so be careful, please don't trip when you're going through there for the bathrooms. There is water and sparkling water over here. Dinner will be here. We'll be coming in at around 5:30. Dinner break is around 6. And I want to give a special thanks to Pierce County Human Services for funding this program through the behavioral health tax, where they fully fund it through the behavioral health tax. I'm going to do a land acknowledgement and a labor acknowledgement, and then I'm going to welcome our director, Chantel Reed, up to the stage to do a welcome as well. And then we will get started with the programming.
It is the land right here that the Puyallup people have lived on since the beginning.
This
right here is where we are in the world, our homelands.
We work on our ancestral lands. We raise our children who go to school on the land of the Puyallup people.
We acknowledge that the Medicine Creek Treaty was signed for the whites to take our land for their benefit.
Land was assigned to our people. The Caucasians said, "This is your land," and they took that land from us too.
Our land was stolen from us. Treaties were broken.
But we are still here today.
Our people forage for food and materials, we pick berries, we canoe, we practice our traditional ways, and we speak Twelshutsi.
Just as our ancestors did.
We are finished.
Okay, so I also want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Puget Sound Salish peoples belonging to the Puyallup, Steilacoom, Nisquamish, and Squaxin Island tribes and bands, and we honor and thank the traditional caretakers of this land. As occupants of this land, this compels us to learn how this land was acquired in order to honor these people. And like most modern-day U.S. institutions, the Health Department benefits from the unaddressed legacy of stolen labor at the foundation of this nation and its vast and inequitable wealth. We respectfully acknowledge our debt to the enslaved people, primarily of African descent, whose labor and suffering built and grew the economy and infrastructure of a nation that refused to recognize their humanity. We recognize our debt to exploited workers, past and present, whose labor was and continues to be stolen through unjust practices. We mourn their loss of life, liberty, and opportunity. We acknowledge that the theft of labor is the theft of generational progress. Nearly all people of color have been robbed of the opportunity and wealth that their ancestors might otherwise have passed on to them. And with that, I would like to introduce Chantel Reed for opening words.
Hello, good evening. I want to say welcome to everyone. I appreciate all of you that have shown up to show commitment to this program. It is key and integral to how we approach our youth. So one, I want to tell you thank you first for making the time to come here and support this. We also want to say welcome, of course, to the second annual. This is not the first, it's the second annual Teen Mental Health First Aid Winter Summit. It could not be brought to you without these people who are very committed to the work that we do here. So to Courtney and team and every single one of the people who have made this happen, I want to say thank you. And thank you to all of our partners who are working to create positive mental health well-being for youth in Pierce County. We know that when we have good mental health, we thrive. That's not just for our youth, but that's for each and every one of us. And we are only as good as what we invest into our youth. We know that 1 in 5 youth experience mental health challenges before the age of 18. In the first year of implementation of this program, we had more than 2,000 youth in 7 school districts to participate in the Teen Mental Health First Aid program. That number has increased this year. As TMHFA continues to grow, we look forward to seeing youth who can recognize the signs and symptoms of mental health and substance use challenges. This is near and dear and true to me because as the mother of 2 teen boys, it's really important to make sure that we create spaces and we create support in order to be able to reach them in meaningful ways. Having conversation about mental health is not always easy. Stigma plays a large part. So tonight on the agenda, you see that we have a panel, and you're going to have the opportunity to hear from youth and what their challenges are. As adults, we want to make sure that the youth feel supported. We need to make sure that we continue policies, systems, and environmental change approaches by implementing the Teen Mental Health First Aid training in every high school. And I am very pleased to have our partners from the school districts here. We're working with Pierce County Schools. We're working with Tacoma County Schools to make sure that we can expand upon programs like this that support youth where they are. We want to ensure that every high school is supported, and as well as teens are getting the resources and services that they need in a timely manner. We need to connect this training program to other programs. It is a part of a larger continuum of what we do. And we're going to make sure that we continue to support and we continue to build upon those practices that we have here. Again, thank you so much for attending, and make sure that you gain every single thing that you can so that we can continue to move this work forward. It is important for our youth, and we want to make sure that we show them that they are our investment. So thank you.
Thank you, Chantel. So now I would like to bring up 2 of our amazing Teen Mental Health First Aid instructors, Christine Pato, Equity Specialist for Bethel School District, and Kiara Holden, Marriage and Family Therapist. Please give them a round of applause. We came up the wrong way.
All right, hello, thank you guys for coming here tonight, and thank you for everybody who participated in our activity, our word cloud over there.
Yeah, so that activity is one that we do during the Teen Mental Health First Aid training to talk about stigma. As you guys saw, we put up stigmatizing language, possibly stigmatizing and non-stigmatizing, and we ask youth to just tell us what they've heard in their community, and then we unpack it together about what, how the impact that words have on us.
And so we asked you guys to share with us tonight your words and phrases you've heard to describe a mental health challenge or maybe a symptom associated with a mental health challenge. And so we've selected a few words from our word cloud over there, and we're going to process them with you today.
Okay, so like the first one I want to use is the weather is so bipolar today, right? That's something that you might have heard used offhandedly, and so this phrase is stigmatizing because bipolar disorder is a genuine mental health challenge that people live with, and using it casually like this undermines the real struggles faced by those, and for many, bipolar disorder can be challenging to navigate, significantly affect their quality of life. So that's one phrase that we can start with there. What's next, Chris?
So next, we have the word lazy. Could be possibly stigmatizing depending on how it's used, but think about how this might impact a teen who is dealing with depression and maybe some symptoms of low motivation, and how hurtful it could be if that teen is reaching out and asking for help and they're met with, "You're just being lazy," or "You may need to try harder." That's another phrase we saw up there. and how that might impact that teen's ability to ask for help, or how they may see themselves internally if we are reducing their symptoms to just laziness, or it's something that they can just try harder to do when it's really something that impacts their way of life and that they don't have control over.
Yeah, and another one could be like the word crazy. That's a big one that we often use, again, flippantly, and the word crazy can also be used in ways that are dehumanizing and dismissive, and so we want to just make sure we pay attention in what ways we're describing that. That's actually one that I've really been trying to unlearn out of my vocabulary, and growing up in the 90s and 2000s, like a lot of different stuff was used and offhandedly appropriate when it's in today's age it is not. So yeah, and so like I said, again, this is an exercise that we do with our teens, and a lot of those words are up there. We even had some teens today that have done the training that did some, so go check it out if you guys haven't had a chance. Yeah.
So we want to end by saying we are not responsible for the stigmatizing language that exists. As Courtney mentioned, I'm an equity specialist, and something I like to speak about is the both and lens, right? We're not responsible for the stigmatizing language that exists. It was here long before us, and certainly long before the teens that we're teaching, but we all have a responsibility as citizens to try to do better moving forward. And we do that by being intentional about the language that we use, because we have the power to kind of help fight in that stigma and help people feel welcome to say that they have a need, and then pursue the help that they need before their problems worsen.
Yeah, that's really well said. And we have just so you guys know, I think it's in your pamphlets, we have a guide available that promotes humanizing language. We encourage you to take this guide and share it with your communities. Together we can unlearn and replace stigmatizing language that prevents many people from receiving the help that they need to recover and thrive. Thank you for your time and your participation.
Okay, let's give them another round of applause, please. So not only are these two of our teen mental health first aid specialists, instructors, they also were on our ambassador group last year, and they both have helped out in the planning of this. So I appreciate you both very much. Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little update on the Pierce County Teen Mental Health First Aid Program and tell you a little bit about what teen mental health first aid is. Some of you in this room are well versed in it, and some of you, this is your first introduction to it. So Pierce County youth consistently report poorer mental health compared to state averages, and this is across all of the Healthy Youth Survey data. And the Healthy Youth Survey is something that is implemented in schools every other year to, I believe it's 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th graders. And 12% report not having a supportive adult in their lives, and although this number has decreased since 2018, it is still higher than the state average. We still have work to do to decrease the percentage even further. Having access to a trusted adult during childhood is critical to helping children build resiliency. Resilience is an individual characteristic that is known to help negate the effect of adversities and potentially transform toxic stress into tolerable stress. And our LGBTQIA+ and BIPOC youth are disproportionately affected by mental health challenges at significant rates. So national surveys and other studies show that, while young people prefer to turn to their friends and for support before a parent, teacher, or professional, they don't actually have the tools to know what to do in that situation. Think of you as an adult. If a young person comes to you and says that they are suicidal, do you know what to do? Do you know what steps to take, right? And now imagine that you're a teenager and your friend is telling you that, and you may not know what to do, right? And so we heard loud and clear from our young people in Pierce County that they wanted support. They wanted to know what to do when their friends came to them with mental health challenges. So that's where Teen Mental Health First Aid came about. So Teen Mental Health First Aid is an evidence-based mental health training that originated in Australia and was brought over here in 2019 by the Born This Way Foundation and the National Council for Mental Wellbeing. And it is a comprehensive training that teaches teens ages 14 through 18 how to identify, understand, and respond to mental health challenges or crises among their friends. And it has a heavy emphasis on how to get help from a safe and trusted adult and how to connect their friends to safe and trusted adults. This training is literally saving lives in our community. So I want to give you an example of a story that was told to me early this year. In the beginning of the year, I got an email from one of our instructors in the Bonnie Lake School District who wanted to report that one of the students that she had trained last spring was able to use the skills from the Teen Mental Health First Aid training to save a life. So he came to her on the first day of school with his phone on speaker, and it was a girl that he had never met, but he played video games with her online. And she had taken a bunch of pills, and she said she didn't want to live anymore, and he didn't know what to do other than go to the instructor that had trained him. And then together they found the school that this young girl went to, which was all the way in Montana, and they contacted the school, and the steps were taken where parents got involved, and the girl's life was saved because of the steps that he took, because of the training that he got. And that's what this program is about. That's what it's supposed to do, right? It's giving them the tools and skills to intervene in a crisis situation until a professional arrives. So for the Teen Mental Health First Aid in Pierce County, we received funding in the summer of 2022 from the Pierce County Behavioral Health Tax to fully fund this program. From there, we launched an instructor application in the fall of 2022, and we also partnered with Boys and Girls Club of South Puget Sound to be our sole implementing site in all of Pierce County. And what that just means is that is the site that, well, one, it's a great partnership that we have, and they help us with this program. But in order to be a Teen Mental Health First Aid instructor or a site that teaches Teen Mental Health First Aid, you have to be connected to an implementing site. And we at the health department wanted to make this program as seamless as possible and as easy to implement for our school districts across the county. So we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club so that they could be the sole implementing site, so that not every single site had to go through the process to become an implementing site, and so that we could have a single coordinated effort across the county. And so then we held the first Teen Mental Health First Aid training at Clover Park High School in December of 2022. And in March 2023, all of the first 25 instructors that we had, they got trained in Teen Mental Health First Aid instructing, and then the trainings began. So we did youth mental health first aid trainings as well. So a piece of this is, in order to do the teen training where we are doing the peer-to-peer work, you also have to train the staff. And so there's a requirement that 5 to 10% of school staff are trained in what's called youth mental health first aid. Not to confuse you, teen and youth are different. Teen is the peer-to-peer. Youth is training adults who work with teens or who work with youth, or adults who live with youth, on what to do in a crisis situation, right? So we don't want to set up the teens for failure. So what we're telling them through these trainings is that there are people in your school who are trained to know what to do when you come to them. And if we don't also train the adults to know what to do when the teens come to them, then we're not doing a service to either. We're setting the adults up for failure as well as the young people. So we really have been working on getting staff trained as well. And then in June 2023, they started the trainings in the community setting so instead of it being in schools, they were doing it throughout places across Pierce County in community-based organizations, such as the Boys and Girls Club, Tacoma Indian Center, Oasis Youth Center, etc. And in 2023, we received additional funding to support the expansion of this program and to continue this program through 2025. And then in October 2023, the training started for that school year, and then again in August of 2024, the training started for this school year. So what does Teen Mental Health First Aid implementation look like? So it can look different. So one of the things that we've worked really hard at is making sure that we are implementing in an equitable way, meaning we know that not every school is the same. We know that even within the same school district, different high schools need different things, right? And like Bethel's a great example, right? We have Challenger, Bethel, now I'm gonna forget while I'm on stage, Spanaway Lake, and Graham Kapowson. They are all very different schools that need that have implemented this year. They implemented and they have trained all of their freshman students in the Bethel School District, and they did it in different ways depending on the school that they were in, right? So some of the schools they were able to do in like their advisory course. Last year, they trained their ELA courses, so their English courses, because this training consists of 6 45-minute sessions or 3 90-minute sessions. So we're asking schools for a lot of class time, right, to do this. But we also know how important it is, because a lot of our students are struggling with their mental health and they want resources and they need to know what to do. And if they're struggling with their mental health, they're not going to do well in school as well, right? So this has been a priority for Pierce County and for schools in Pierce County, and it's across the board. Every school district that I have gone to try to get this implemented into, it's never a no, our students don't need this. It's always just a yes, our students need this, but how do we get it there, right? And so what we've done is we've been really flexible with each, and there's certain requirements by the National Council that we hold on to, but we also have been flexible with each of the different school districts to figure out how do we best implement it so that all your students receive this training. And in some schools, that looks like they've done, like I said, ELA classes. This year, 9th grade has been adopted, so it wasn't originally, it was just 10th through 12th, which made it really difficult, because I don't know if you all know, but 10th grade is a testing year. It's also, there's not a single class in most school districts across Pierce County, there's not a single class that all 10th graders are required to take, but the only one is 9th grade health. And so finally, we advocated with the National Council to get the 9th grade curriculum approved. And so that's been a huge success this year. We've been able to implement in health classes. And then some school districts, it wasn't possible to do the entire grade level, right? And so instead of doing the entire grade level, we wanted to get it out to students as much as possible. So some of the schools did after school programming. Some of them just did any class that would take it, right? So like a psychology class or a cooking class. And then, the youth mental health first aid training is another piece. So that is a 6 to 8 hour course for instructors to do. So we've overcome some obstacles as well in order to do that, but we've trained quite a few adults as well, and you'll see in a minute what that looks like. So these are the course objectives for Teen Mental Health First Aid. So it's teaching young people how to recognize early warning signs that a friend is developing a mental health challenge or is experiencing a mental health crisis, particularly suicide, but it does go over more than suicide. It teaches them how to have supportive conversations with friends about mental health, explains when and how to get a responsible adult involved, discusses where to find appropriate and helpful resources about mental health challenges and professional help, and applies the Teen Mental Health First Aid Action Plan to help a friend experiencing a mental health challenge or crisis. And so what is the action plan, you ask? This is the action plan. So it's look, ask, listen, help your friend. And the action plan actually, it does a little rhyme, and I'm gonna follow my coworker Abraham here. I'm not gonna ask students to do something that I wouldn't also ask adults to do. So I'm gonna have you all participate with me for a second. What we do for them so that they can remember this is you clap with it. So it's look, ask, listen, help your friend. Okay, so I'm gonna ask everybody to do it with me. Ready? Look, ask, listen, help your friend. Let's try it one more time. Look, ask, listen, help your friend. Cool. See, we got it the second time. Good job. So this action plan teaches them, they learn how to use this action plan in different crises. So they learn how to use it when a friend is suicidal, engages in non-suicidal self-injury, experiences a panic attack, is using substances like alcohol misuse or drug misuse or overdose, is experiencing trauma like bullying, cyberbullying, threats of violence, and assault or abuse. So this training does not teach young people how to become therapists or counselors. We are not asking them to diagnose their friends. Just like when you take physical first aid, you're not becoming a doctor. You don't know how to diagnose what's happening, but you are provided the skills and tools to intervene in a crisis until a professional arrives. That's exactly what we're doing, but for mental health. And we're empowering our young people to do it for each other. But there is a really heavy emphasis on connecting with a safe and trusted adult as well. So we don't want them to carry all of this either, right? We don't want them to feel like they have to solve this. We just want them to have the skills and tools to know who those safe and trusted adults are and how to connect with safe and trusted adults. So a student from Lakes High School, I was the instructor, and I was out. I had done the training for them, and then I was out at some event in the community, and he spotted me a few months later. And this was a student that I didn't think was listening. You know, he was like me when I was younger. You know, all over the place in the classroom. That's fine. But he said he recognized me, and he said, "Hey, you were my instructor for that mental health thing." And I said, "Yeah, how did you like the training?" And he said he loved it because he was worried about his friend. He realized he was worried about his friend, so he had a conversation. It taught him the skills to have the conversation with her, and because she was actually having challenges, then he helped her connect with her middle school counselor, because that's who she was comfortable with. She was in high school, right? But that's who her safe and trusted adult was, and she was able to receive help from that therapist, and she was doing better now. Again, another testament to the work that we're doing with Teen Mental Health First Aid. So other benefits for teens, they don't only become certified first aiders, which just like when you take physical first aid, you become a first aider, right? They receive a take-home manual with everything that they've learned. So if you're a parent in this room and your teen has taken Teen Mental Health First Aid and you're interested in what they're learning, look through that manual. It has everything you'll need to know. And then they become certified with the National Council for Mental Well-Being, and we let kids know that they can use this certification for things such as, they can use it on their internship applications, college applications. They can use it when they are applying for jobs, right? And they also receive volunteer hours. So a lot of schools require young people to complete volunteer hours before they can graduate. So a lot of school districts are allowing them to use this 4.5 hours of training as volunteer hours and use it on their high school and beyond plans. Also, an unintended consequence of this training that we didn't foresee, there's a lot of young people who've shown interest in pursuing a mental health career since taking this training, which is huge because we have gaps in the mental health career field. We have not enough therapists and counselors for the number of folks who are seeking support. And so if we can, that's just an amazing thing that now we have these young people who are actually really interested in pursuing that career from taking this training. So the Pierce County goals that we had were to secure funding and develop, coordinate, and expand the Teen Mental Health First Aid Program, which we did through the Pierce County Behavioral Health Tax. Then we wanted to implement Teen Mental Health First Aid in all of Pierce County high schools so that every student receives this training at least once before they graduate from high school. And we wanted to increase the number of certified Teen Mental Health First Aid instructors. Prior to this program in 2022, there were 2 trained instructors in Pierce County. There are now 60, I think about 60 of them trained. We also wanted to reach youth with disparate mental health challenges, so our LGBTQ and BIPOC populations, and increase the number of adults trained in youth mental health first aid. So now the fun part, to see the numbers of what we've done. So we have successfully trained since December 2022, we have successfully trained 4,930 students. And they are all certified. And we have an additional 1,000 students that are either currently taking the training or scheduled to take the training before February 2025. That's huge. And these numbers have grown exponentially this year, and it's amazing to me. This time last year, or no, let's see, to put it in perspective, through December 2022 through December 2023, we had trained 2,500 youth, and then we're not even through an entire year, and this is the number that we have now. Pretty cool. We have completed 200 trainings across 31 host sites in 9 school districts, sorry. And host sites are the locations of the trainings are done at. So again, those look like schools or community-based organizations. So after each training, teens complete an exit ticket that states whether they're concerned about themselves or a friend, and if they would like to be connected to a counselor. These trainings generated an uptick in the number of referrals and number of students seeking services, and there were 285 referrals made. That's 285 students who felt safe to reach out for help after receiving this training. Additionally, we have successfully trained and certified 60 teen mental health first aid instructors who are comprised of school counselors, health teachers, social workers, therapists, and employees from a variety of youth-serving organizations. If you are a teen mental health first aid instructor in this room, can you please stand up? So this is not everybody, but these people are what make this program go around, right? I do the coordinating, but they all do the work. And it is a lot of work to do the training. So I appreciate each and every one of you so much. And if you haven't already, if you are a teen mental health first aid instructor, we have something for you in the back. So please don't forget to check in with Abraham. You get to have one of our sweatshirts that we give to the teens usually. And we also have a certificate for you because we really do appreciate you. So please don't forget to check in with Abraham before you leave. This program would not exist without you and all the hard work that you've put in. So my words are not really enough, but I literally wholeheartedly appreciate each and every one of you, and I love working with you. That's the cool part too. It feels like a community of people who are really dedicated to moving this work forward, and it feels really good to work with all of you. So how do we know if it's working? Right? How do we know if this program is working? So we created an evaluation process. So we do an in-class pre and post survey that measures knowledge gain and confidence gain among youth before they take the test and after they take, or sorry, not the test, before they take the training and after they take the training. We had a goal, we had a goal of training 60% of 10th graders. Oops, sorry, never mind. Our goal was 60% to increase their knowledge and recognizing mental health illnesses, and 85% increase their confidence in using teen mental health first aid action plan. That was our goal. And this is what happens when I go off script and I lose my place. Okay, so it does work. It works. 90% would recommend teen mental health first aid to a friend. 88% increased their confidence in implementing the teen mental health first aid action plan, and 77% increased their mental health knowledge. So we reached our goal in these trainings. And we trained a higher percentage of participants who identified as Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, Black, and Latino Hispanic American compared to their relative population percentages in the county, as well as an increased number of LGBTQ youth as well, which was one of our other goals. So we succeeded in that too. So another piece of other than the quantitative data, we have some qualitative data from these surveys. And so this is what the young people, what their favorite parts were. So well over 100 participants enjoyed activities such as assessing the artwork, using the workbook, writing the exit tickets, making and presenting the posters, role-playing, watching the videos, the incentives, such as winning prizes for answering the questions and earning service hours. They loved having this space at school to talk with their peers about mental health that led them to feeling validated and learning that they're not alone. And here are some quotes from our young people about their favorite parts. So we have one person said, learning about approaching the topic of suicide with a friend was helpful since I didn't know a lot about this stuff prior. Another said, my favorite part was lesson 4 because it covered panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and I've personally experienced both, which really made me feel seen and also excited because other people were now aware about it. Another kid said, learning that it's okay to ask for help. And another, when we watched the videos and I understood that I'm not the only one struggling. So then we also, of course, asked what their least favorite parts were. And most of the responses had to do with the material, like course content, or the difficulty of topics. A lot of young people said that even though they know that these topics are important to talk about, it was hard to talk about it. It's not natural and normal to talk about it in the school setting like that. And then some of it was external factors, like people were talking through a session or things like that. And here are some quotes relating to that. So I think there could have been more resources to share, something more tangible that isn't phone or online. Having to be exposed to tough subjects I experienced myself. And then another said the pacing of the classes were too long, repetitive, and boring. The other one said the suicide stuff, even though I know it's really important. And lastly, just the silence and how foreign it is to talk about this stuff. Okay, and at your tables you have this as well. You can either do this now, or since I did put them at the tables, you can do it in a little bit, but we have an entire evaluation report that goes over the pilot program. The pilot program ran from December 2022 through December 2023, so if you're interested in more detailed data, you can review that. We also did a focus group. We're going to do more focus groups this year. That's one of the additions to this program, because we wanted to determine utilization, or we wanted to determine if young people are actually utilizing and retaining the information and using it long term, right? So yes, they may have increased their knowledge right after the training, but are they applying it in real life? Are they using it outside of this training? And in the first focus group, we found out that they were. These are some quotes from some of the young people that participated. I think everyone should know these skills. I got the help when I needed from using the steps of teen mental health first aid. One of the young people in the focus group said she actually wasn't worried about a friend, she was worried about herself, but the training gave her the skills to talk to her mom and have that conversation. And she was able to get support, and she was able to get medication, and she was feeling better from that. So learnings, these are my lovely coworkers, and every pilot program comes with some learnings, right? So we learned flexibility with implementation, like I explained earlier. The National Council has some rigid, they had kind of some rigid rules around how to implement, which meant that it had to be for an entire grade level all at once, and that didn't work for some of our school districts, so we were able to be flexible and communicate with the National Council that that wasn't gonna work with our school districts, and they were able to be lenient on that, so we just definitely wanted to be flexible. We also use our own survey versus the one that the National Council holds. That one is considered a test. It's a 12-page test. And I took a look at it and I said, we are trying to reduce the mental health challenges of our young people, not add to. So I'm not giving them a 12-page test before and after. So I spoke with the National Council and let them know we were still going to measure the success of the program and the knowledge gain, but we were going to do it in a little bit of a more friendly way. So we did that as well. We learned some stuff around best practices for survey data management, and I won't bore you with all of that, but we lost some data at one point, and then we learned really quickly that we can't make adjustments to that in the middle of sessions. And we also were able to streamline communication. So originally, when this first started, we had about 45 instructors the first year, and it all was done through email. So all the onboarding steps, all of the communication, I can't tell you how many emails I got from multiple people asking me for the same thing over and over again, because how many emails do we get, right? And so my coworker Abraham and I, we worked with our IT team to develop a teen mental health first aid dashboard. And so instructors now have a dashboard where they have every single step that they need before, during, and after the training. They have every document they need. Any communication goes on there, and it has been extremely, extremely helpful. So desired next steps. So we are currently in the process of transitioning from individual contracted instructors to an MOU with certain school districts. So some of our school districts have instructors that work for the district. And so this allows us to train more young people. Because currently, the contracted individuals receive a stipend for the completed training, because we always want to be able to pay folks for their work. But that's not the most sustainable process when it comes to implementing this program as large as it is. And so we've been working with school districts to work in the MOU model. This allows us to better implement to the full grade level and increase the number of teens trained. And we've been working towards systems change where this training becomes embedded into their school curriculum for every student to receive at least once throughout their high school career. So currently, we are supporting the Career and Technical Education Department in the Puyallup School District to apply to OSPI to request the Teen Mental Health First Aid Certificate be added to the state approval credential list for CTE courses. And then it would be a statewide credential that would work for like higher education. And it would be embedded into their curriculum. So if this works through Puyallup, it's a process that we might be able to then utilize in other school districts as well to make this become just a common training that young people take every year. So if you have questions for me or my coworker Abraham, where is Abraham? Oh, he's outside? Okay. Abraham's amazing. I would not be able to do this without Abraham. So when he comes back in, or we can give him a round of applause. He's not here, but he's fantastic. So if you want to take a picture of this, my cards were up front as well. I'm always here to answer questions. We don't have all the time in the world tonight to talk about all the details, but I'm happy to. I would love to share with others how we did it. I'm a huge believer in if I already had to make the mistakes, why do you have to do it as well, right? Like I want to share knowledge. So please don't hesitate to reach out and ask me any questions that you have. So that's it for my portion. Yeah, thank you. So next we have Ashley Magnum, a licensed independent clinical social worker from Tacoma, Washington, who serves as the director of Kids Mental Health Pierce County at Mary Bridge Children's Hospital. Kids Mental Health Pierce County is a state legislatively funded program dedicated to developing a coordinated, responsive behavioral health system that serves the need of children, youth, and families at the right time, in the best place, with the best outcome for every family. Prior to her current role, Ashley served as a medical social worker within adult and pediatric emergency rooms. Ashley also spent several years working in public child welfare as a social worker, supervisor, and practice consultant. Ashley was recognized as the 2023 Puget Sound Business Journal 40 Under 40 honoree, which recognizes rising stars in the local business world who have distinguished themselves in their companies, their communities, and their industries. And on a personal note, this woman absolutely inspires me. And I'm super grateful for her dedication and commitment to improving the mental well-being of all youth in Pierce County. So if you could please join me in a huge round of applause to welcome Ashley Magnum to the stage.
Congratulations. That's some difficult data to follow. Almost 5,000 young people trained in teen mental health first aid. That is worth absolutely celebrating. Yeah, we can do it, I promise. Well, good evening again. I'm Ashley Mangum, she, her. I'm the director of Kids Mental Health Pierce County, and that was a very formal bio. But before I get started, I do have a couple of acknowledgments that I do want to do. First, I acknowledge I am the final thing before we eat dinner. So if I look out and see angry faces, I'm going to assume that you don't disagree with me, that we're all just hangry and ready to eat, okay? Also, if you are a young person, and for this purpose, because I think we all think we're still young, under 18 here in this room, can you stand up for me? Can we please acknowledge these young people? If you are a parent, caregiver, mentor of these young people that are in this room, can you stand up as well? Thank you again. And that's so important to me because I see a lot of community partners in here and leaders and decision makers and influencers in here, and we cannot make decisions around you. We have to make decisions with you, with your voices in this room, and you could be anywhere today, but for you to choose to be where to go first. So it's awesome that we're spending some time to talk about prevention, because prevention for me is how we're gonna make sure that we have healthy children, healthy youth, and healthy adults in our communities. And it's really a huge investment into our community. So you guys got to hear my formal bio, but this is really who I am up here. So I'm about as Tacoma and Pierce County as it gets. I was born at Tacoma General Hospital. I graduated from Tacoma High School, Mount Tahoma. Any Mount Tahoma T-Birds here? Okay, there's always usually one. We also made it to football playoffs, which that wasn't happening when I was in school, which is really, really exciting. And I always like to talk about this because, especially for the young people in here, one of the things that I'm most happy about being in the position that I am is this is my home, and these are my kids, and this is my community. And so when we talk about prevention and we're talking about having these conversations with our young people and our decision makers, having these conversations at home and being able to support the community that you know absolutely the best is one of the most gratifying things for me in my community, and really can speak to that return on investment and bringing those tools and resources home, or after you go to college, after you get your degree, after whatever you choose to do, coming back into your community. It's also my favorite creature right there. That's Mr. Jameson. That's my kid, and what really drives me. Anytime I do these conversations, I always like to have agreements, right? We know when we talk about mental health, there's stigma, there's so many different things, and so I think it's just important for us to all recognize that we must strive to overcome a lot of the historical and divisive biases, such as racism, sexism, ableism in our society. We also need to acknowledge that we've had misinformation, we've learned things that may not be true, and it's our responsibility when we learn other information to be able to share that information. Also making sure that there's no blame, right? We want to respect each other. We want to speak to individual experiences. I am not the representative for all of Tacoma and Pierce County, right? I'm not the representative for all of African American community. I'm talking about my individual experience, and I think it's important for us to do that today. And then just leaning on trust. I trust that you are all here to talk about the same thing, our kids, right? And I say that very intentional, our kids. You know, Courtney really highlighted earlier today that the importance of that adult connection. You young people, while you're sitting here, I want you to look around the room, and if you don't have that person, there's so many people here that are willing to be in that role for you as you continue on your journey. And then also, not an expert, right? I'm here as a community partner. I'm learning with you. I'm always looking for additional information. And then understanding intent versus impact. Sometimes we may use words. Sometimes we may say things that are not meant to be impactful, but that wasn't our intent, but it had an impact. So just always want to keep those things in mind when we have these kind of community conversations. So I'm actually going to start my talk with just a very, very short video. The joys of technology, but I promise you the video is worth it. It'll give us some context of what we're talking about today. Do I need to hit, you press play? Perfect.
Among the most accomplished and fabled tribes of Africa, no tribe was considered to have warriors more fearsome or more intelligent than the mighty Maasai. It is perhaps surprising then to learn the traditional greeting that passed between Maasai warriors, and how are the children? It is still the traditional greeting among the Maasai, acknowledging the high value that the Maasai always place on their children's well-being. Even warriors with no children of their own would always give the traditional answer, all the children are well. Meaning, of course, that peace and safety prevail, that the priorities of protecting the young are in place, that Maasai society has not forgotten its reason for being, its proper functions and responsibilities. All the children are well means that life is good. It means that the daily struggles for existence do not preclude proper caring for their young. I wonder how it might affect our consciousness of our own children's welfare if in our culture we took to greeting each other with this daily question, and how are the children? I wonder if we heard that question and passed it along to each other a dozen times a day, if it would begin to make a difference in the reality of how the children are thought of or cared about in our own country. I wonder if every adult among us, parent and non-parent alike, felt an equal weight for the daily care and protection of all children in our communities, in our towns, in our states, and in our country. And I wonder if we could truly say without hesitation, the children are well. Yes, all the children are well.
Did you get goosebumps? I do every time I see this. I think I've seen this video probably 20 plus times, and every time it inspires me every day to get up and ask that same question. And one of the things that stands out to me the most when I hear that is all of the children, right? Regardless of where you live, what type of household origin you have, your socioeconomic, what insurance you have, shouldn't dictate how you're cared for in our communities. And so really taking on that responsibility that these are all of our kids, and we all have something that we could do in this room to improve the lives of our children here in Pierce County. And so I just really want to encourage you as you're reflecting on this presentation and as you're thinking about your eyes and what you can do, thinking about that these are all of our children. All right. I'm having a hard, it's the transition. There we go. We can skip that. So how are the children? I know that you heard briefly from Courtney some of the statistics that we've heard on a national level about how kids are impacted from mental health, but this is the reality. You can pick a headline. You're hearing the conversations almost on a daily basis about the growing needs of our kids when we talk about mental health. For many of us who have been in this field for a really long time, this is not new for us, right? For us at Mary Bridge, we have been seeing a significant increase in the youth that are coming into our hospital for behavioral health related complaints. And when I say significant, 400% increase in those kids coming. So we're seeing it more and more frequently. When we look about that compared to, on a national level, it really being the leading cause of disability when you compare it to other things for our young people. And then also really looking at that onset, to think about these diagnoses are happening for our kids before they even turn 14. And so again, these are numbers that I really want to leave with you in the sense of this is why prevention is so, so important. I know that we talked about disproportionality. There are communities in our community that are impacted very differently, right? Our kids that live in rural communities that may not have access to internet or things to support telehealth, our LGBTQIA+ communities, our communities of color, they're all very disproportionately impacted in being able to have access to a provider, to have access to culturally relevant services, linguistically appropriate services, and all of those things have impact on our young people and how they're doing in their well-being. It's also very costly. You know, as I was looking at the numbers for it, we spend $85 billion per year on mental health treatment. $85 billion. When I have conversations with leaders and community organizers, and I think about where we could be allocating these kids, this funding to our kids and our families for them to be well, I think about so many opportunities to reinvest that so that we're not having to invest in the highest level of care with the most intensive resources. But actually acknowledging that prevention may not be counseling, it might be a bed at home. It might be a warm coat. It might be a Boys and Girls Club membership. It might be a braiding class to learn how to take care of your hair. Those are the things that we need to think about when we think about innovative solutions and how do we bring the community and the families into the behavioral health continuum so we're not relying so heavily on a very strained behavioral health workforce and we know already lack of resources. And then when we talk about access, right? So we know that there's a growing need. The access is not keeping up with what those needs are. So even though we know that there's a need, we still have a very significant access issue. It's very difficult for parents to navigate a system. My job is to know the system. I have difficulty navigating that system. And so again, thinking about where to go when something is needed. Instead, what if kids had access to the right services at the right time when they needed them? That there was no wrong door, that you would go to a place, whether it be your school, your church, and they would know how to guide you. And this is really what teen mental health is doing, of giving the kids the universal information that they need to be able to help navigate them in the right way, and that we're giving information in real time to really support those behavioral health needs. And then how are our Pierce County kids doing? I know Courtney mentioned and shared a lot of data, so I don't have to go over that a lot, but this is the data from our Healthy Youth Survey. And for me, the percentage that's really, really concerning is that they're stopping their activities, right? It's more than just the feeling of being sad or anxious, but it's being sad and anxious enough that I'm not doing the normal things that I would do. I'm not functioning. And so really making sure that we're paying attention to that. And then again, really making sure that we're promoting better health, right? It's better to promote the health than the illness. And so how do we get ahead of that in a more meaningful and coordinated and supportive way that reduces stigma? If you've ever heard me speak before, this is probably one of my favorite slides to share, because I think it gives a very, very good visual representation of the complexities of the risk factors that impact mental health. This is one of the reasons why we really, really work hard to connect folks to community resources from a hospital, because we realize the limitations that we have when kids come into our door for a crisis, right? Because we're only addressing the individual risk factors, and sometimes the family risk factors, but there's so many other things that contribute to that. And it's really important that we not rely solely on the child, but really focusing on the web of interactions, or I like to call them the safety net of interactions, that are really impacting and contributing to the risk factors of mental health for our kids. And again, I just want you to remember that I statement, because I all belong in that for a young person in this room. Right? So thinking about the neighborhoods that our kids live in, how are they able to access? Thinking about just the community, what is the stigma, what are the conversations that we're having, and how are we supporting their mental wellness? And really, again, making sure that we're acknowledging that it's just not one single risk factor. And because of that, it's gonna have to take all of us, a whole society response, to really be able to adequately address all the webs that really impact the mental health of our young people. So everything's not bad, right? We always start with the data, the scary numbers. But today we're really here to talk about mental health promotion and prevention. And I think it was really, really important to separate the two and really be clear on what they are just from a language perspective. But this is really at the core of what we're doing here in this building today, and really at the core of a public health approach to children and youth to address the mental health concern. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth about what promotion is. So those are efforts that are really designed to encourage and build skills before the onset, right? So thinking about building the self-esteem, thinking about social emotional learning, thinking about the things that really just help our kids in overall being well. Right? You know, we need to really focus on not just pulling out the mental health component of it, but how are you well in all of those social determinants of health? How are you well in all of those areas of your life? And so that's really about what the mental health promotion is. You know, I think sometimes we confuse feelings with mental illness, right? An actual mental health diagnosis. So sometimes when I get calls and somebody's like, my kid's sad, I'm like, they should be. What happened to them was really, really sad, right? Is that a mental health diagnosis? Is that a mental health disorder? No, that's a young person experiencing feelings that they should be feeling. And so again, these are opportunities for us to really encourage our young people through various different strategies that you can use when we're talking about promotion. So I'll have some examples later on today, but those are great things like our early childhood intervention programs that we have, or I know we have some amazing nurse partnerships, thinking about providing support for children. We've had some really, really great grassroots organizations that are coming out in our community that are really innovative and really connected to our youth. And one thing that I would really say, if you are a funder, if you put out grants into the community, thinking about these opportunities are so critical because these organizations have such an impact on our kids, but oftentimes cannot access that funding. But they are doing the work and connecting with our kids in ways we absolutely could not. I will never forget our first ever mental health summit that we threw. We rented out the Grand Cinema. We flew somebody in to do a whole panel presentation. I think about 10 kids showed up. About 10. I had a very vivid lesson that day. We don't ask kids to come to us. We go to them. So our next summit, we partnered with a school district. We actually included them in the planning conversation to say, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear? They didn't want a documentary. That's not what they wanted. They wanted resources. They wanted conversation. And that's what we did. And we had over 200 kids and families participate. So that's what happens when we don't build these responses to them, but go to them. And for some communities, you need that community champion. You need that grassroots organization that has trust with that community to be that influence for that young person. And so really thinking about those opportunities, again, of encouraging that promotion early on. This is for all of our kids, all of our families to really have some promotion of really the importance of mental wellness. And then for prevention, I know I see a lot of school folks in the room, so it looks probably very similar to your MTSS model too, but really thinking about prevention in a few different tiered approaches. So we think about universal prevention strategies, and again, that's for all kids. This is really what we're talking about with teen mental health first aid too, right? The goal of all of our kids to have this training through our schools or through our other community-based organizations, regardless of any identified risk factors, right? And so that is amazing, and I think Courtney's really did a good job of highlighting some of the secondary results that are happening. Kids are being interested in becoming mental health clinicians, right? They're having conversations, they're reducing stigmas, they're taking ownership, they're having voices, they're becoming advocates for themselves. And these are all skills that are so important. And so making sure that we're providing those universal interventions that are proactive. And because they're universal, it also reduces that stigma to really encourage more participation as well. And so really kind of thinking about that tiered approach. You also have your selective intervention programs, and that's again for communities or individuals that may have had a risk factor that they've identified. Maybe they are from a household where there's been incidents of domestic violence or substance abuse. There's been a screening that's occurred, and that might be where you have some identified interventions that you can put into place. And then as it goes up, you also have your indicated prevention. Again, those are for kids that may have been referred to a system for behavioral health risk factors concerns, and then you go to your treatment level. And so again, when I think about that continuum of care, I think it's so important to think about that through all those lenses, because that's the only way that we're gonna be able to really create that system that we're talking about. That for me, it's not a system, but a community response, where again, kids are getting what they need, when they need them, and hopefully as close to home as possible. And then I also wanted to just include something about resilience, because I hear this quite often when we talk about kids. We hear kids are resilient. That's not enough. And this chart really for me was a visual to show all of the things that have to contribute to resiliency, right? That should not be put on a child alone, right? It's not a child's responsibility to pull themselves up by their bootstrap when they're faced with life challenges, but there has to be family, community response. There has to be learning self-esteem, learning how to love yourself, learning how to reach out to safe and healthy adults. One thing that I didn't get to share in my introduction is I'm actually a kid with lived experience as well. If you heard a couple ahas and shouting back there, I got two mamas sitting at that table right there. Two of them. And one stepped in when I needed some help. And as you can see, at my old age, they're still here and showing up. And that adult connection is so important in building that community and supporting each other. And so thinking about those lifelong impacts that has when you have that healthy adult and the responsibility that comes with that, I just don't think we should take lightly and encourage that impact and that connection you have with your adult can have lifelong impacts like it has on mine. And so thank you again to all of our trainers and mentors and coaches and parents and caregivers. But again, it doesn't always look like the traditional family, right? It can look different in building that community and having those folks surround you when you need them most. So I can't say I was just resilient, right? I had trusted adults who taught me, who took me places, who made me watch college shows. So I learned about college. I learned about sororities. I got to play sports. I got to go to the Boys and Girls Club. Again, another shout out, Boys and Girls Club. But all of those things, right? Because if I didn't have them, this could be a different conversation. I could be in a whole different role. And so I just want to make sure it's so important that we're thinking about prevention and relationships and that opportunity throughout the lifespan of a child, because it just doesn't end when they turn 18, right? They're going to continue to need that support. Also, when we talk about the impact, for me, this is really the best investment that we can make on our community. I know we have lots of conversations now about the opioid epidemic, about our homelessness challenges, about workforce. There's so many things that when I step back and think about it, what if we would have been able to intervene when they were a young person, when they were a child, when they were able to get some of those resources that may not have contributed to them being in that circumstance. And so really thinking about prevention is super, super important, and really making sure that we talk about it in a way that it does do positive effects. I know if any of their data people in here, there's a lot of research and findings that are still in progress about it, but I really want people to think about the cost of what happens if we don't invest in our kids. I think that cost is far greater than thinking about prevention and promotion of mental wellness for our kids. I also just want to acknowledge some challengement for implementation, again, for any of my decision makers, funders, of really thinking about the benefits of implementation of prevention programs. This is such a huge investment. We have seen funding for our youth mental health crisis services. We've seen funding for services for kids that have been hospitalized. I don't think I've seen any report that's reached 5,000 kids, right, in a way that this program has had. And so really thinking about workforce challenges, I was reading some information that said it usually takes about 2 to 4 years for a program to be able to be fully implemented and go through kind of those growing pains. And that's a huge challenge for the behavioral health workforce. And so if we're only relying on that again, I think we're gonna have a lot of challenges to be able to really meet those needs for our kids. Also, again, advocating big time. There's a very, very important hearing next week with our Pierce County Human Services Committee around the Behavioral Health Improvement Plan. That is what helps fund teen mental health first aid. We have to have an active voice in those conversations. We have to advocate for those. We have to be involved in those discussions. And so sharing your voice, reading that report, being able to share that information is going to be really important for our council to hear the impacts, more than just a cost-benefit analysis, but actual lived experiences, stories from our young people, the quotes that Courtney was sharing, the things that our young people are seeing about how this is so much beneficial to them than having to wait for a crisis to occur instead of waiting for a diagnosis to develop, and those consequences and impacts that happens when those things do happen. And then again, it was so important to just acknowledge the families that are here. Families are so important when we think about best practice for prevention and promotion. We work really well and closely with an organization called A Common Voice, and they provide parent partners that are always present in any conversation that we have. These are parents with lived experience and can really always kind of support that parent and be that voice and that champion as well. And one of our partners always says, nothing without us, right? And so we really need to, again, hear our parents. They really are the champions for their children. They know them the most, and being able to include them again in those conversations and not building a system around them, but also recognize that they are the decision makers and they should be supported as such. Thinking about when we hold events, right? A lot of our parents work. So when we're having that Wednesday from 10 to 2 meeting, can they come? Is it a viable option for them? Do they have childcare? Do they have access to resources that would allow them to participate in the capacity that we're doing? These are things that we have to ask ourselves as a community and really promote as we continue to build this response that we need for our kids to make sure that they're able to get what they need. And it's not just a responsibility of our parents and caregivers. It really does require that cross-system approach, those levels again that I talked about. And for me, I always talk about a safety net, right? We all have a string in that, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a coach, a mentor, we all play a part in that. And the more that we work together collaboratively, share information, learn from each other, it reduces the risk of kids falling through that safety net when we're able to put our resources together, particularly during a time when we know resources are really limited and strained, and unfortunately not very preventative and focused on that prevention efforts. So what can the future look like? And this is what it can look like for me. And you've heard me say it, and I'll always say it, services and resources at the right time, when families need them, and as close to home as possible. We want to continue to advocate for services that are highly accessible, that are acceptable. We've gotten input from the families, from the communities, from the young people and the supports available to sustain, that they're appropriate. You know, we want to make sure that the kids are getting the right services and the right resources, right? Making sure that they're referred to the right programs. One of the most impactful quotes I ever heard from a parent is, "We don't need another door to an empty room." And that's what we do so many times. Here's a list, call these phone numbers and figure it out. Half the phone numbers don't work. Half the phone numbers, they don't take your insurance. And the other half have a 6-month waiting list. That's not helpful. So how do we build this sustainable, accessible, appropriate, and sustainable response to our kids to make sure that they have what they need? And that is through collaboration. And again, one system cannot be responsible for the prevention or the response or the recovery of our kids. It's really gonna take a whole community response. So there are some absolutely great things that are happening in Pierce County. I just wanted to highlight a few. That we have incredible years, our nurse-family partnerships that are really working with families from birth. They can access parenting classes. They're designed to promote emotional and social competence, reduce and treat emotional behavioral problems in young children. Hope Sparks is an amazing organization. They just got some federal funding to really expand their integrated healthcare model, which is really exciting to have behavioral health embedded in your primary care setting, so when those screenings occur, they get access to treatment. One program I'm really, really excited about is a program called Innovative Changemakers. They are Tacoma local efforts. They really have built a strong youth response. One program that they've done is trained barbers, cosmetologists to be peers. So in certain communities where you're not going to talk to therapists, you're not calling crisis lines, you're going to that barbershop, right? You're going to that salon. So to have somebody trained in behavioral health resources, that's innovation. That kid is gonna touch so many more people, touch that group of people more before they're gonna touch one of us behavioral health professionals. And so really looking at that innovation and that support is really, really important. And then I wouldn't be a good director if I didn't talk about Kids Mental Health Pierce County. So Kids Mental Health Pierce County is a community collaborative. We've been working together since 2018 to really create and advocate that streamlined system of care. It started as just a Pierce County response. We brought the community together and said, what do? We know that Mary Bridge cannot solve this. This has to be a community response. And one of the things that I'm so proud of Pierce County about is we get to yes. We get stuff done in a way that what started as Kids Mental Health Pierce County is now Kids Mental Health Washington. So the collaboration that we've done in this area, focusing a lot on crisis, they're looking at Pierce County of like, what do we do across the state? So I'm excited to be at that time where we can shift out of crisis, because if we stay in this crisis, we're gonna be in crisis forever. It's time to shift to prevention. That's the only way we're gonna get out of crisis, is if we invest in prevention for our kids and families. So back to the I. If you know me, I like to come up with sayings. Sometimes they're mine, sometimes they're somebody else's that I put together that makes sense. But this one is mine. So there is no I in team, but there is an I in prevention. Write that one down. So what can I do, right? Because we also like to shift that, right? We look like the Spider-Man meme all the time, dressed alike, pointing at each other. It's you. It's your responsibility, healthcare. Child welfare, it's your fault. Juvenile justice is your fault. That's not working, right? It's all of us. It's an I. And I really like, there's a report, and there's a link to the report. It's the U.S. Surgeon General's guide advisory, and it really breaks down on every level, whether you're a parent, caregiver, whether you're a youth, a school district, a funder, things that you could do. And these are just a few things that I just wanted to highlight. So thing one is recognize that mental health is an essential part of overall health. And I think this is something that you guys are doing through this Team Mental Health First Aid work. Also empowering our youth. Again, when you are creating these spaces, making sure that they are a part of the conversation. We should not be having conversations without them in some capacity, right? Incentivize it. Pay those kids for their expertise if you can, right? They work for hot Cheetos a lot of times, but that's what they told us they wanted, so we're gonna bring the hot Cheetos. So again, engaging them in a meaningful way that's impactful, that you can show them the results, and ensuring that every child has access to high quality care. You know, we work really well with our insurance providers, our funders. Again, we don't wanna wait again until it's a crisis to be able to intervene. There are lots of resources on the Kids Mental Health Pierce County website that you can connect with to learn more about those. We also want to make sure that we're supporting our youth in different settings. So I've heard about a lot of school-based programs and partnerships, our community-based organizations working together again to create that net around our kids, because we know that they're going to have more access to them than you would through the formal mental health system. And again, making sure that we're addressing those economic and social impacts. So like I said before, not all interventions are clinical. We know there's a resource need that's not met. It's really hard to access things when you don't have a car and there's no bus line where you live, right? There's no internet where you live. You don't have access to a telephone. You go to a school that doesn't have the mental health supports. So we really have to acknowledge those things and continue to access. And then again, making sure that we are getting data, making sure that we're having timely information to have informed decisions. So please, if anything, get connected. This hopefully is not the first time I get to talk with you. I'm happy to connect through the rest of the event today. But Kids Mental Health Pierce County is a great resource to really learn about resources in real time. We have some very innovative supports. We have a community multidisciplinary team meeting that anybody can request support from that could support young persons. We do webinars. Today's actually Children's Grief Awareness Day. We had a phenomenal webinar from Bridges Center for Grieving talking about how to support grieving children. And we do things in real time in response to the community. And so get connected, sign up for our newsletter. We're happy to support you in any capacity that we can, and young people, that includes you as well. So again, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about something we don't get to talk about often. For so many years, our kids have been secondary thoughts in the conversation. We're finally at a time where we're taking priority and investing in them in the way that we should. And there's a lot of factors right now that can impact the ability to continue to do that. So again, there's no I in team, but there's an I in what? My community. All right, thank you so much.
Can we give her another round of applause? This is why she inspires me, because she's amazing. So thank you, Ashley. Okay, the time you've all been waiting for, dinner. So I just want to do a couple of thank yous really quickly, and then give a little bit of instruction for dinner. So Abraham's back in the room, so I want to actually give him the thank you and applause for all the work he's done. Thank you, thank you. And I want to reiterate, kind of like Ashley was saying, this is heart work for me, right? This is not just a job. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I too have lived experience. I am somebody who, I needed this when I was a kid. And so I have dedicated my career, not just here, but like my whole career has been dedicated to being the person that I needed when I was a kid. And providing the resources that I so desperately needed, and kids like me, right? And so through my journey, I am now in recovery. And I met somebody named Kelsey, who is also in recovery, who developed a line of clothing to bring about mental health awareness because of her dad's struggles and her own struggles and the how we don't talk about it, right? So her goal is to make it commonplace conversation, same as it is for us, right? Like this should be dinner talk. We should be checking in with our students, our youth, our young people, right? Our kids. I have a teenage daughter. I check in with her often about her mental health, and that's what I hope that we all can continue to do. So I also, if you haven't seen her clothing, it's over there. We give it away to our young people at events, and they also receive it as swag in their teen mental health first aid trainings. It's amazing. She has her own store as well, and so her cards are over there, and she's in the room today. So Kelsey, could you stand up so we could give you a round of applause, please? Thank you for your clothing as well. And then Diana Sullivan, she's in the room as well. She was our OG when this comes to teen mental health first aid. She was the original teen mental health first aid instructor in the county. She worked hard before I even started here, with the Tacoma-Pierce County Health Department to bring teen mental health first aid here because she knew the impact that it could have, and she's been one of the most amazing partners, and I'm so grateful for you. So if you could stand up so we could give you a round of applause. Okay, now I won't hold you all hostage any longer. It is now dinner time. We have about 25-30 minutes for dinner, so if you could move through the line quickly. We wanted 2 lines, but then it just wouldn't work. So if you could move through the line and get your food, we may have to continue eating during the youth panel, but please don't leave if you can, because the most important voices in the room are about to speak in about half an hour, and that's the youth that are in this room. So go ahead and get your dinner, take a break, and I will let you know when we're convening again. Thank you. We have 6 youth panelists on the stage. They are all certified first aiders, meaning that they have all taken the training at various times throughout the last couple years, different schools. They're gonna introduce themselves, but the host of this is Diana Sullivan, who I already introduced, but I'm going to introduce again. She works for Boys and Girls Club of South Puget Sound, one of the most amazing partners one could ever have. So let's give her a round of applause as well. Okay, so we're going to have everybody introduce themselves, and then they are going to have a series of questions asked by Diana, and they're going to answer. And I just want to encourage every person in this room, especially the adults, to please have your listening ears on, because these are the most important voices in the room right now. How can we develop youth mental health prevention efforts without their voices, right? So here we go.
Thank you. All right. First of all, thank you guys so much for giving your time tonight. Like Ashley said earlier, you could be anywhere, right? You could be home, sleeping, chilling, and you're here with us. So thank you so much, because I know everyone is still here because they were waiting for you, not for us, right? So you do have the most important voice, and it's time for us adults to be quiet and listen to that, okay? So thank you so much. So first, we're gonna start with introductions. So if you can share your name, pronouns, school attended, and grade level. And I can repeat it if you forget. But in true fashion, I will model, because adults should always model what we ask of you. So again, my name's Diana Sullivan, she, her pronouns. I attended both University of Maine and PLU, go Lutes. And I will not say what grade level I'd be in if I was still in school, because I'm not on the youth panel. We'll just leave it at that. All right, so here we go.
My name's Blair. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a junior at Gig Harbor High School.
My name's Henry. He, him pronouns. I attend Spinaway Lake High School, and I am a 9th grader.
My name's Allison. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a sophomore at Peninsula High School.
I'm Claire. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a junior at Sumner High School.
I'm Zalia, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a student at Lakes High School.
Hi, my name is Bricky. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a junior at Bethel High School.
All right, thank you. So let's get this going. What was your experience taking this training of teen mental health first aid? And we'll start with Allison.
My experience was very eye-opening. It provided me with a safe space where I could openly share my thoughts and experiences without fear of judgment. It gave me a new way to look at mental health, and I was able to look at it through other people's eyes. This helped me get a better sense of empathy and awareness for others' mental health on a deeper level. Because of this training, I have a lot more awareness of what people can be going through, especially struggles that teens go through.
Perfect, thank you. Well said. Okay, and now what was the experience taking this course for you, Claire?
My experience taking this training was very positive and knowledgeable. While mental health can be a hard topic for some teens to learn or talk about, Teen Mental Health First Aid made it so that in class, people felt like they could connect to others and belonged. I felt very happy at the end of this training because I now know many positive ways to respond to situations regarding my family, friends, strangers, and even my own mental health.
Thank you. All right, next question. Why do you feel like we need teen mental health first aid in our schools and in your schools? And we will start with Blair.
I think that this program absolutely should be in all schools because informing a wider audience of teens on mental health struggles is very necessary. Additionally, students learning about mental health in the context of their own lives will be super beneficial in helping them, helping themselves and their peers.
Again, well said. All right, so Brookie, why do you feel this should be in your schools?
Well, I feel like it should be in our schools because so many teenagers like myself don't know how to explain or honestly don't know what they're experiencing. So I think it's helpful that you get to that you see what you're experiencing and that you know how to explain what you're experiencing and you understand what's going on. And the fact that you get resources as well is really helpful. And it can be such a hard and confusing journey to go on alone. And I think it's amazing that they're teaching others as well. If you see your friend struggling, you know what to do, because I felt like when I saw my friend struggling, I felt like my little I hope you're doing okay was not enough. So now that I feel like I know what to do, it's just really helpful, and I feel powerful. So yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, and now Allison.
I believe we need this program in our schools because many students may not know how to handle certain situations simply because they haven't had those difficult conversations that everyone needs. This program could help students support each other and break down the stigma surrounding mental health. It would also be helpful because a lot of students face challenges at school that they might not feel comfortable talking about at home. Often the older generation doesn't fully understand the mental health struggles that our generation faces today. Our generation has the power to shape the future of mental health, and programs like this are important for raising awareness about issues that so many teens experience.
Thank you. You guys are doing so good. I'm a grown woman and I am nervous and I know so many people in the crowd. So take a breath, you're doing amazing. All right. So what are some key takeaways that you learned during this training, Claire?
Some of the key takeaways I gained from Teen Mental Health First Aid was to always be observant and stay calm during times of hardship. Being observant is important because a lot of teens struggle with mental health in silence. Teens feel like they will be made fun of if they struggle, so they often feel like they can't reach out to someone. As for my other takeaway, reaching out, which is staying calm, this is important because through Teen Mental Health First Aid, I learned that individuals who struggle with mental health feel like when people try and help, they make it worse with how they act or what they say. Therefore, it is best to stay calm when helping others.
So very true. All right. Claire, you're just up next. So how has it impacted you and the others that you know that took this training?
This training has helped me by giving me the skills I need to detect mental health struggles around me and resolve them to my best abilities. I have had to use the skills when my friend who was struggling with their mental health I observed her being sad and she didn't talk much during lunch, so I reached out to her one day to see if there was anything she did. When she told me she was struggling with how she looked compared to others, I felt sorry for how she was feeling, but I let her rant and get her feelings out. After, I validated how she felt and gave her positive feedback and offered my support. We ended up going to church together, and this helped her through her struggles, and she's been a lot happier lately. I'm so glad I had these tools to support my friend and thankful for Teen Mental Health First Aid for being available at my school.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's really inspiring. Okay, what were the benefits of taking this training for you and others? And we will start with Zalia. Yes, I did it.
Okay, sorry. Some of the benefits it offered us was the ability to speak freely about teen mental health with others, allowing us to have a more welcoming energy and being open with each other. Our perspective on vulnerability had changed, and we became more aware on the seriousness of teen mental health and how it affects others. On these three benefits, personally for me, my perspective on vulnerability had changed a lot because growing up, I was never really talked to about my feelings, and it would never be like, oh, why do you feel this way? Or, talked like, do you need someone to talk to? And I felt like during the training, I looked around in the room a lot of the times. There were kids that weren't interested, but like there's no bad blood there. I understand that. But when I would raise my hand and like participate, I would also look around, and I did see a lot of other people there, and them raising their hands taught me a lot about vulnerability, and that with vulnerability comes bravery. And without showing that vulnerability, I wouldn't be in this panel today.
Thank you. You are so correct. All right. So Henry, what were the benefits of taking this training for you and others?
The benefits for me from taking this program were that I was able to find out how to help myself in times of need and others when they are in times of need.
Thank you. All right, and for you, Blair, same question. What were the benefits of taking this training for you and others?
So I noticed quite a few benefits as a result of taking this training. However, the main one that I've noticed in my own personal experience was that it gave me knowledge on how to help people who are in a mental health crisis or like the beginning stages of one. And I've been able to apply this knowledge to help some of my friends and peers, help them access help when they were struggling. Additionally, it's helped me become more in touch with my own mental health, and I can kind of, note the signs and be able to take care of myself in that sense.
Awesome, thank you. That is really important part of this. All right, so we already said, right, there's so many adults in this room, and we all have our listening ears open. And so while our ears are open, what would you like the adults in your life and in this room to know about the teen mental health? And we will start with Brookie.
I want them to know that teen mental health is such a serious thing to go through. I feel like to go through so much hardship while you're still in your teen years really takes a toll, and it's just not something to joke around with. And even if like maybe you're not the most educated in the topic, to just have just listen. That's like all I really want. I feel like when adults think about like their own mental health, I feel like back then it was so much different. You could it was nothing, or I just pushed through it. But like these days, it's just not like that anymore. And I feel like it's so hard to speak up about like what you're going through. So like, instead of just being like, because I've heard these all my life, well, you have warm clothes and a roof and food on your table, so why So why are you like complaining or like, oh, you're just lazy or you're just ungrateful? And those things really, really take a toll. It doesn't want to make you speak up. It makes you feel like your mental health doesn't matter. And I want adults to understand that it's more than that. That mental health is not just like an adult thing to go through. And that teens, it affects you so much. I feel like so many adults have gone through hardships in their own teenage years, and they don't realize how much it's affecting them now. So that if they just can be just a listening ear. I mean, I'm not expecting all of you guys to have some crazy, thoughtful things to say when we open our mouths. No, I don't want that. But I just want you to understand. I just want you to listen. Just listen. That's all I ask for. And just listen and give us resources. Like, honestly, I feel like you can listen, but then the next day you can't just act like everything's fine and normal. Like, you have to take the steps. And yeah, that's all I ask.
Thank you. So we need to close our mouths, open our ears, and remember that they're experiencing things a lot different. Thank you, Brookie. You said it much better than I did. All right, and now, Henry, what would you like the adults in your life and also in this room know about teen mental health?
I would like them to know that teen mental health is not a joke at all, and a lot of adults that I have talked to not recently, but in my past, have just not taken mental health seriously at all. And it's just unbelievable the amount of adults in this world that don't take teen mental health seriously at all.
Thank you. Yes. Once again, their experiences are their experiences. So thank you for that. All right, and Zelia, what would you like the adults in your life and in this room to hear?
Okay, I apologize in advance. This is kind of a long answer, guys. But one thing I would want both the people in this room to know and in my life about teen mental health would most definitely be the awareness to sensitivity. In this generation, a lot of teenagers are really set on being tough-skinned and appearing motionless and having their guard up every hour of the day. Kids who say that they can't be hurt by anything any further, but in reality, behind a lot of that tough skin and behind those thick walls, they were kids that were either turned down by the adults in their lives, whether it was friends, relatives, or relationships like lovers. There is a child that looked forward to the forthcoming days, and a child that eventually lost their smile along the way and spends nights hoping that it'll come back in any way, shape, or form. One word, one action, and one expression, that's all it takes to impact anyone's life, but especially a teenager's life, negatively. And the things you choose to do in a moment's time will affect and stick with someone for their lifetime. But just as it takes to affect someone's life negatively, it takes one person to say something positive about a person, and then that'll impact them in a positive way.
Thank you. Such great wisdom. All right. Last question, formal question, is how would you describe the current culture of mental health among you and your peers? So, Henry, how would you describe that?
I would describe it as not that great at the moment, but I feel like it can get better over time, and I hope that it does get better over time.
Thank you. So again, that's why it's so important we're all here and that you guys are here to tell us that so that we can hear you and do that prevention work that was talked about throughout the night. All right, Allison, how would you describe the current culture of mental health among you and your peers?
I feel like the current state of mental health among our peers isn't the best. Our generation is deeply impacted by social media, which often creates unrealistic expectations and pressures. Substance and drug use are also big issues that affect many people our age. On top of that, we live in a very judgmental society where it's easy to compare ourselves to others, and I feel like we don't measure up. There is this constant sense of competition where teens often think they're better or more important than others, which can make things feel even more isolating. What makes it even harder is that many people don't know how to support or help each other, which leaves a lot of us struggling in silence. The lack of understanding about mental health makes it more difficult to find the help and support we need, and that needs to change.
Thank you so much. All right. And Zelia, how would you describe the current culture of mental health amongst you and your peers?
Between me and my peers, I feel like the culture around mental health is honestly at its best right now. I think it's that way simply because we were brought up the same way and we bond on like kind of giving each other mental health advice and depending on one another. But I do have to agree with the other panelists that in this generation, it's not all that great and it is a touchy subject. But just as seen in all the data and everything, there's a lot of change that's been done. And I do believe that programs like this is life-changing to people. And I hope that those who had said like the culture for them and their peers isn't the best, I hope that it does improve. Because for you to have such a great culture with your with mental health around you and your friends, I feel like that's really eye-opening and it's important because I've never felt this way with my friends and I've never had like such secure friendships in this way. So I feel like it's really important to maintain those kind of friendships, especially when it comes to serious topics like mental health.
Thank you for that. And now we will ask Blair, how would you describe the current culture of mental health among you and your peers? That is not, sorry.
Yeah, I fully agree with the other panelists. I just kind of want to say, like, between friends and like close peers, I think like the attitude towards mental health is relatively casual. You know, like it's not uncommon for someone to talk about having a disorder such as like anxiety or depression. And a lot of us know someone or are someone who has one of these struggles. This might not extend to all social groups or between everybody, but for the most part, I think it's okay to talk about it with your friends. I think the problem definitely lies with older generations, and that's kind of where the majority of the stigmatization comes from, which then trickles down and affects us.
Thank you. Yeah, so we got work to do, y'all. That's speaking directly to us. And then Brookie, how would you describe the current culture of mental health among you and your peers?
I would describe it as, it's not the best right now. I don't know if you guys know this term, but it's seasonal depression. A lot of my friends, including myself, have been going through that. And so I don't know how to explain it. Because you don't really know what's going on with yourself. It's just everything's sad these days, I guess. But with me and my friends, we can all talk about it. So that's the good thing. I feel like we're all close and tight-knit. So it's not like an uncomfortable talk. I think the most uncomfortable thing is having to reach out to an adult, because as I said earlier, these these older folks really just don't get it. I don't know. I just that's really it. They don't really understand that I don't know if it's common, but you just get these waves of sadness and it really brings you down and you really don't know what to do. So yeah, but I just feel like nowadays, a lot of my friends want to reach out. They come to me and are like, I want to get a therapist, or I need help, or what should I do? And it's just they see me as that person, but I want them to see their parents and their adults and their teachers as that person. And I feel like that's the problem here, is that oh, you can see your friend as that person, but you can't see your parent as that person. And that's the problem to me, but yeah.
Thank you, Brookie. Absolutely. And so, again, if you are one of those people for your youth, right, start spreading the kindness, because we need more youth in this room next year and doing this work so that they can hear the youth and they can be that person. And so this is the chance now, if there's anything else any of you would like to add based off what you've heard today, or anything coming to mind, this is your chance.
Sorry, guys, I know I had some long answers, but one thing I would like to add, as we all get ready to wrap the youth panel up, I hope that you guys took something away from a lot of our opinions on mental health. We come from different groups of friends and, obviously different areas, so mental health is obviously gonna look different on a lot of people. The way we ask for help is gonna look different. Our signs that, our symptoms or whatever that you used to call it mental health, it's gonna look different for everyone. So I hope that our voices opened your eyes a little bit and opened your ears and closed your mouths a little bit. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed our takes and our opinion and our views on our teen mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that needs to be on our slide next year, Courtney. Close your mouth, open your eyes and ears. That's our segment. All right. Anybody else would like to add? All right.
My bad, I just feel like a yapper right now. But I want to talk about the social media part, because I feel like, oh my gosh, social media can be such a helpful but harmful thing. I'm telling you right now, as a person who's always on their phone, I can scroll endless hours and hours, and I can see all this amazing videos and TikToks and stuff being you got this, you can do this, and it's wow, it's empowering. I wish people said that to me in real life. But then I'll get one video and it'll be oh, I just feel so down these days, and then every other video is just sad and depressing, and I feel it just it makes you feel so comfortable in the sadness that you don't want to get better. And I feel that's really important. I feel I don't know, don't take your kids' phones and go through it and stuff, but monitor what they're watching, honestly, because I'm telling you right now, especially younger, I don't know, 8th to 9th grade kids, please, because it's so easy to get just scroll all day long and get trapped in this world. It's just oh, I feel so comfortable and welcome here, but you're not getting any better, if we're going to be honest. You're just getting worse, because you're just you're letting these terrible thoughts and feelings get to your head. So I would say check up on your kids often, especially when they're in their room for hours and hours, because I can be in my room for hours and hours and hours, and oh my gosh, I could go through so many breakdowns in the span of 2 hours, and I'll walk out and I'll be everything's cool and everything's fine, but secretly I'm wishing that someone would ask me, are you okay, Brooklyn? Do you want to sit down, Brooklyn? So yeah.
All right. Thank you. Check in on your kids. Check in on your youth is what I heard. Anyone else have any last pieces? No? All right. Well, y'all did so good. Thank you so much for your bravery to be up here. You did wonderful, and I'm super impressed I didn't trip on a cord, y'all, but your voices are important. Thank you so much.
Can we give them a standing ovation? Okay, is this mic still on? Okay. Thank you. Man, I don't know about y'all, but there was a couple times that I got a little teary-eyed. I have a teenager myself, and I don't know, just their words are so powerful. Oh, this is not even the right notes. Sorry, just a minute. Okay. So, as you heard directly from our young people, they are comfortable talking about mental health with each other, but they are uncomfortable talking about it with the adults in their lives. Not because they don't have the language and the skills and the tools to do so, but because they don't feel like they have safe spaces to do so. One thing that I always talk about when I talk about teen mental health first aid is we are doing amazing. We trained 5,000, almost 5,000 youth, right? Almost 5,000 youth with another 1,000 to go just before February. That's 6,000 youth by February that are going to have language to speak to mental health challenges and crises. They are going to have the skill set to identify when their friends are going through mental health crises. I don't know about you, but I didn't learn that in school. I am a millennial, and we didn't go through that in school, right? So there are generations of us who don't have that same language or understanding or know how to identify or respond to mental health crises. We have, not of a fault of our own, but a lot of us were raised, you suck it up, and you just keep going, and there's nothing wrong with you, right? Boys don't cry, right? All these things, all these messages that we have heard throughout our lives, those stick. So we have this young generation that is, we're undoing that for them. But they're going home to parents who are still very stuck in the stigma of talking about mental health, or maybe not even the stigma, but they just don't know, right? They just don't know, or they don't think it's as serious, or they have no idea how to help themselves with their mental health, let alone their young person, right? Or like that attitude of like, well, I did it, you can do it too, right? And that's not helpful. So what about the adults? Right? Like, how do we bridge the gap between the young people learning these skills and the parents and the guardians that they're going home to, the coaches that they're receiving coaching from, or the pastors, or the youth group leaders, right? The teachers, the adults that they interact with on a daily basis, the bus drivers, right? Like these adults that become pillars in their lives, but don't have the same skills and tools to talk about this stuff, right? And that is a huge gap that we have when it comes to prevention work. Because as you heard from Ashley, the family is the biggest piece of prevention, right? Like that. Let's get our young people and let's get them before it becomes a crisis, and that can start at home, right? That starts with adults having hard conversations with their young people. That starts with adults having the hard conversations with themselves, right? That starts with us doing the work as adults, but if we don't know what to do and we don't know any different, then how can we do that, right? So that we can be that safe space when a young person comes to us and says, hey, I think I have anxiety. And instead of shutting them down and just saying like, nah, you're fine, we can say, okay, why do you think that? Like, let's have that conversation. And then, okay, let's do the next step. Let's go get you some support, right? And it not be this huge, massive deal or argument, but it's just a natural conversation and step that we take to help our young people, right? So I know that there's a gap in services there, and I want to work to fix that. I've been saying that from the beginning, right? Like, we need to include the family, we need to include the adults in kids' lives, but how do we do that? That's the hard part. How do we do that? Because I don't know about you, I'm a parent of a toddler and a teenager. I'm not taking an 8-hour class after work. I just can't. Right? Like, I don't necessarily have that capacity. So how do we, but it doesn't mean I don't care about my kids' mental health. It doesn't mean I don't care about learning new skills and tools. So I need your help in this audience to participate in our next activity about how do we involve the adults in kids' lives. So if everybody could take out your phone, please. The phone that we are all stuck to, like Brookie said. If you could take out your phone and scan, or you can scan, so there's the QR code on the table, or there's a QR code up here. So who are the adults in teens' lives who we should be engaging in the conversation around teen mental health? right? So I see teachers, parents, pastors, coaches, aunts, uncles, clergy, grandparents, family, youth pastors, right? These are all great people. Are there more? What about friends, parents, you know? I know that my daughter has felt safe talking to her friends' parents, right? Yep. We're also in a generation now, one of the other things that we're seeing is we have a lot of grandparents and great-grandparents raising children due to, you know, quite a few things. But it boils down to poor mental health, right? That's essentially what's happening. We have generations of folks. I think one of the young people, I don't remember, I'm sorry at this moment, who said it, but that like a lot of us adults don't realize the stuff that happened in our teenage years are affecting us today, right? We didn't learn the coping skills to manage our emotions at a young age like they are. And so we've turned, several people, lots of people, including myself, had turned to alternative methods to cope, right? Because we didn't know any better. These are great answers, thank you. STEM teachers, siblings, that's great. Neighbor, yes, neighbor. Oh, don't even get me started on I just feel like we need to get to know our neighbors better. We don't live in a community as much, yeah, anyway, that's a whole different topic. Okay, so school counselors, nurses, police and military, family friends, extended family. Great, I love it. Okay, thank you. All right, so we are gonna go to the next question. What are some key messages we want every adult in the community to know about mental health? So you heard some from the kids. What was it? Close our mouths, open our ears, right? Yep, you can make a difference. Mental health is real. It's not just a phase. I like that one. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's not scary. Mental health is as important as physical health. Yes, thank you. Poor mental health, long-term poor mental health can have physical effects later on, right? Talking about suicide doesn't cause suicide. I'm gonna go off the, I don't know, my script here, but I do want to talk about that one real quick. That's something that we talk about in the training. And for everybody here, it is a myth that if you talk about suicide, it will make your young person want to commit or want to engage in suicidal activity. That is not true. There's actually studies that have been done that there's no correlation there. Right? And it actually helps them if you bring it up. So we actually in the training practice asking and saying, are you thinking about suicide? Right? Like ask your young person those questions. It's a hard question to ask, but it's so important, and state it for what it is. Are you thinking about suicide? Right? It's super important to ask. So don't judge. It's not a joke. There's no I in team, but I in prevention. Good job. Y'all were paying attention. Great. Okay, thank you. Next question, please. What are some effective ways to engage the adults in children's lives to support their growth and well-being? So this is the key one, right? So we just talked about the adults that we're trying to engage. We just talked about some key messaging. So how do we get there? How do we get those adults involved? How do we let them know that it's okay to not be okay, right? Because one of the hard groups to engage with, is families, right? For many reasons. Families are busy. They're at capacity as it is. They are working. They also, some families really are, what happens in the family stays in the family is a big attitude that a lot of us have, right? And so how do we break through and get the resources to the adults in our kids' lives? So some things, we've got info nights with childcare. Oh, wow, this is gonna, can you go down? Can you scroll? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we've got make it normal to talk about mental health. Disconnect being a good parent from youth. Okay, never mind, just kidding, go to the bottom, sorry. Go to the bottom. All right, let's try that again. Okay, so talks at dinner table and check-ins, family mental health nights. Webinars, community-based education and prevention, incentivize the learning. Having conversations and trainings like these, we need to collaborate to spread awareness. Be open to listening to a teen about their struggles and getting them to help without judgment. Disconnect being a good parent for youth. Make it normal to talk about mental health. More bonding times and conversations. Continuing education, info nights. Yep, daily check-ins, access, great. Child care, community training, so parents can attend. I love that one. That one's huge, right? Okay, so there's a lot of ideas up here, and what I want to do is at your tables, you just received a big piece of paper, and there should be pens or there's a marker. If I can have one scribe for each table, I would like you to talk amongst yourselves, and what I'm talking about is what are and I want to know what your top 3 things are. How do we as professionals, my question is really, how do we as professionals who are in this work of prevention, how do we connect with you as a parent better? How do we get you the resources that you need to support your young person, right? What's something that's realistic that you would do, right? Would you attend more info nights? Would you attend an education? Would you attend a webinar? Would you like a newsletter, right? Would you attend a mental health first aid training? What would work for you? And what do you think the top 3 things are? Like, so what are your top 3? So that's what so talk amongst your tables for a little bit and then write down what you think the top 3 things are, right? So yes, having those conversations at night, but not every family is in the same space as some of us here, right? They don't know how to have those conversations. How do we break down that stigma? How do we break those barriers? So I'm gonna be quiet for a little bit and I'm gonna have you guys kind of work amongst yourselves for a little bit and then we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes or so. What are your top 3? Okay, so is there anybody at any of these tables that's brave enough to share a couple answers? I don't think that we have the ability to stretch the mic to you though, so you'll have to be loud. But can I get a couple of responses from tables? What you talked about? Yes, Allison. You gotta be loud.
Like essentially, you know, not all parents, but when parents' kids are involved in something like speaking, you know, they might show up for their kid, and then they're hearing the information, you know, by being there. So
great, yeah. Break it down and understand. Okay, so just for anybody who couldn't hear what they were saying, they said to have more events where youth are kind of centered so that parents show up, right? So like they wouldn't have been in this space had their youth not been up here doing a panel, right? Which is a great idea because then they sat through this whole presentation and got all of these resources and this information that they wouldn't have otherwise had. Wonderful. And then the other piece was break it down, right? Break it down into like understandable bits, right? We don't always have to give all the information all at once, but even if we just keep with certain messaging, right? Like little bits at a time. Kimberly.
Well, one of the things we were saying based off of that same information is that we have a hard time in the schools getting our parents to have the time to come in. So why don't we take this information to where they already are, the sporting events, the practices, the engagement where the parents already are and have a mental health table or booth or something. And again, resources, pamphlets, flyers, things that we can hand out so that they can come to us easier.
Great. So what Kimberly is saying is that why don't we go to where parents are already at, like sporting events, right? Or a play, right? If their young person is in theater, where the parents are already coming to see their young people, and we can have like booths of information around mental health and resources and those conversations for parents that come up to the booth during that time. Great idea. That's huge because that's kind of one of the hardest parts is getting parents to show up in spaces. That's what I was getting at, I guess, is like as a parent, parent. It's not that I don't want to show up. I just am so tired after working and feeding the kids and doing all the things that it's not always feasible for me to then do yet another thing. But I do show up at her volleyball and wrestling games, or matches, games, whatever they're called. Yes.
Piggybacking off of that idea of going to where the parents are is maybe outreach to local sports organizations like Little League or the soccer or the travel clubs, where the coaches and mentors already are volunteering their time. So if a class like this is available, so that, you know, a coach can be like, okay, now not only am I providing them encouragement in this game that we are doing, and that gives them a very heavily involved presence, you know, then they can recognize things that they might not ordinarily be like, oh, hey, this kid's got this thing going on at home and he's not going to talk about it, but maybe in this setting where they already know and have built a rapport with the kids, then you can just piggyback off that.
Perfect. Thank you. I didn't pay you to say that, but that is actually, so what she's saying is, why don't we involve coaches and mentors that are already mentoring the children in these types of trainings, right? And at Little Leagues and at basketball games, and they're already mentoring them in coaching for the game, right? And the reason I say that is because that's one space that I have been trying, not just me, but like also our entire behavioral and emotional health team has been like, that's a gap area, right? How do we get coaches involved? Because they have such an influence on our children, right? Whether they're great coaches or not so great coaches, right? It can really impact the mental health of our children. I've seen it firsthand with my own daughter, right? And so but they don't necessarily have all the resources that they need to have these conversations with young people. And I know that when a young person is highly engaged in their sport and they love their coach, that is like their biggest mentor. For my daughter, that's her biggest mentor at school is her wrestling coach, right? So if she's going through something and she goes to him, he should be provided those skills and tools, and he's probably a parent himself, right? So then it trickles down that way too. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, we have time for one more. Back there.
I'd say to get employers to know about this program, because time, effectiveness, and loss, because of parents having to leave work because their children are in crisis, that they would actually make money by having a healthier workforce that would just keep going into the larger agencies. I know if you took a larger agency, but even the smaller ones would be willing to take on this model for the community.
That's great. So he's saying tap into employers, right? And provide this training for employees, because the workforce, there's strain on the workforce when they have to leave or for things like addressing their young people's mental health, or they have to leave because the school calls, or all those things. But if you invest in your workforce and you provide them with the skills and tools needed, and the employers the skills and tools needed to understand this stuff, then you're actually going to save money for the company, right? That's what you're saying? Awesome. Okay, thank you all so much. So those pieces of paper, please leave them at your tables, because I need them. I need all of your brains. So leave them at your table, please. And thank you so much for participating. So before you all leave, I'm almost done, I promise. I know Kimberly's like, get out of here. I gotta go home. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm better at giving out the thanks than taking it, so sweating now. But thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, so how can you help right? How can you help in this effort? These are the action items, right? Join us. Let's make mental health support a community standard with a statewide impact that empowers our youth, right? That looks like connecting, sharing successes, and collaborating with peers that are doing the work. The unique thing about Teen Mental Health First Aid and the health department, so the health department has all these programs, like my coworkers back there who do the substance use work. There's people across the state in public health that do that same work. So they have like a collaboration that they can go to different counties and talk to them, right? This is brand new and innovative in Pierce County. We don't have that yet. So how do we build that? There are other places though, like Diana Sullivan who, at Boys and Girls Club, they received some funding. They're working in Bremerton now. And so I've had people from Auburn talk to me about how to implement it in King County, right? So how do we grow the movement of teen mental health first aid and prevention work, and how do we connect better so that we can all work on the same issues together, right? And then it starts with you. Have the hard conversations. I'm going to say it again. It starts with you. Have the hard conversations. I know that it is uncomfortable and it is hard sometimes for us to say, are you suicidal? Are you okay? Are you, what's going on, right? And then sitting back and listening to that. Sometimes that can make us very uncomfortable because we all naturally want our children to be okay, right? But we have to have those hard conversations. We have to talk to our teenagers, especially if our teenagers are super disconnected and they stop talking to us and they're hiding out in their rooms. You heard Brookie, check on your kids, right? Check on your children and keep asking, even if they don't talk to you right away and they're just like, psh, psh, whatever. Keep asking, keep creating space, keep being those safe spaces for children to come to, right? And then the last one, support lasting impact. So continue to invest in long-term sustainability. So you heard Ashley earlier, and it's a real thing in prevention work. The funding stops. They tend to, funding flows to prevention work and they want to see results right away. They are data driven. Grant funders are data driven, which I understand to an extent, but true prevention work takes time. We are trying to build healthy children to become healthy adults. We may not see the impacts that we're going to have until 10 years down the road when our crisis systems are not flooded, when our prison systems are not flooded, when our homelessness systems are not flooded, right? When our mental health, we have adequate mental health services for folks, right? And people can get services at the right time when they need it, and people are accessing services at a higher rate than they are now, right? And mental health, overall mental well-being is on the rise. We will see that in time, but we have to continue investing in the programs that are currently working, even if the data doesn't meet exactly what they're looking for. We can't stop funding these programs, right? And then we have to look at sustainability of programs, right? Like we don't want to lose the momentum. This program is, Teen Mental Health First Aid, like I said, is exponentially growing. Like I didn't even expect to talk about sustainability efforts until 2025. And I had to start in March of this year. So like that's a testament to the work that's been done, but that's also showing that the community needs it, wants it, and it's working, right? And so it's created good problems for me to work on quickly, right? Because we have to make sure that we have enough money to sustain the way that we're going, right? And so that's my job, to make sure that it keeps flowing and it keeps working. So I would like to ask all of the folks who participated in the planning committee to please stand, because I did not do this alone. Come on. Some of them are already standing in the back over there. Can we give them a Thank you all so much. Could not have done it without you. The other piece is, like, yes, this is a health department operated program, but I have contracts with over 60 different people, individuals, agencies, right? So this is not just a health department program. This is a county-wide program that works with school districts, community-based organizations, so many different people. So it could not be done without y'all. And last thing, Well, actually, two things. Many hands make light work. So we have to clear everything. So if you could please throw away your trash when you're done, take what you would like with you. Please throw it away. The fidget toys on the table, take them. They are for you. Take them. Also, if you're an adult in this room and you're interested in taking a youth mental health first aid training, there's a sign-up sheet back at the table where all the books were. Please sign up. And then if you are interested in taking to-go boxes home of food, we have so much food. Please take that home. And there's questionnaire surveys on your table. Please, we can't do better if we don't know better. So please let us know your thoughts. If you could just scan that and take that participation survey to let us know what you thought of the event today, that is super helpful for us. So again, thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. Thanks for making it a good event.